With the championship all decided, will we see Marc Marquez return from injury and race in this season? Well, I have a theory, and the answer may actually surprise you. Welcome back to Monday Morning MotoGP, and we are going to be talking about Australia. But before we jump into everything, if you could please like, follow, share, subscribe, mash all the buttons so you get all the MotoGP content you can possibly imagine. We have a lot to go through. We're going to talk about the Moto2 Championship. Yes, Moto3, MotoGP are already decided, but Moto2 is very much up for grabs, and these guys are going to hit each other in the face for the rest of the season. We're also going to talk about inconsistent riders. We're going to talk about parity in MotoGP with the different winners we've had this season, and we're going to be talking about Aprilia. Yeah, I have to finally just eat it completely and eat all my words from the past about the Aprilia race team. So let's jump right in it. The first thing we're going to talk about is the Moto2 Championship, which is coming down to Manuel Gonzalez and Diogo Moreira. Now, at one point, it looked like Gonzalez just had Diogo's number. Yes, Diogo Moreira, very, very fast, has made a splash. He was a Rookie of the Year in Moto2 last year, was very strong this year, but it looked like Manuel Gonzalez could just manage this lead he had and win the title, and which was, adding insult to injury because it's Diogo Moreira's name that keeps being mentioned and finally confirmed as a move up to MotoGP, not Manuel Gonzalez. Now, we know that Gonzalez had that test with Aprilia. He looked really good, but right now, there's not much room for him over there at Aprilia, and so Gonzalez is out of luck. He's going to be racing in Moto2 next year. There's no MotoGP seat for him, but Diogo Moreira is making the move up, despite not really being in contention for the Moto2 Championship. Or so we thought. Now, I'm oversimplifying that. Yes, of course, mathematically, he's been in this title fight all season long, but it's so apparent how hungry this kid is to put all the critics to bed and say, no, I'm moving to MotoGP as the Moto2 World Championship winner, and I'm going to do it by kicking ass in the last half of the season. And we've seen him time and time again, week in and week out, including this week, is just take some points from Manuel Gonzalez. Gonzalez has looked a little vulnerable. And this last weekend in Australia, Senna Aegis, congratulations to him, the Australian winning his home GP in Australia. I think the first rider ever to win an intermediate world championship race in his home country in front of his home fans. He was gone. There was no question he was going to win this race. It was the battle for second, third, fourth, and fifth that looked like a Moto3 race. I think it was even back to eighth at one point with Canet coming into play and Sasaki coming into play. Just all these guys fighting and changing positions every single lap. But it was the two world title contenders that have the most to lose. These guys are up in this pack running with 6 riders, and they are trying to finish in front of each other to basically have that points buffer going into the last few rounds. And it was Moreira that ended up coming out the better. And I think what the championship difference now is like 2 points. And this is looking like it's going to come down to the very last race. I would be shocked if it doesn't. And we're going to see who can actually win this Moto2 title. So for those who are saying, oh, what's MotoGP? What's to watch now? Marc's won the title and Rueda's won the title in Moto3. What's left to play for? Well, there's a lot of pride to play for. With Marc Marquez out in MotoGP, there's a lot of wins to play for. There's someone that's going to get a feather in their cap and say, I won a MotoGP race. And in Moto2, the championship is alive and kicking, and it was a massively entertaining Moto2 race this last weekend in Australia. Again, hats off to Senna Aegis. Great race, managed the whole thing, got the tires working all the way to the end. You can't take anything away from the way that guy rode. But the real entertainment value of this race was that battle for second, third, the podium and beyond, because of all the playoff, post-season, what do you want to call it? What do you want to call it? Championship implications that came with those battles. One mistake by either guy, throwing it away, and the championship changes drastically. These guys have to be aggressive. They have to fight for the top positions, but they also can't do anything stupid. They also can't throw it down the road while fighting someone who's not involved in the title fight. And I think that's what we saw from Gonzalez when he realized, hey, I'm getting a little beat up here, and I can't be susceptible to these risky moves from other riders. If they wipe me out, the title is over for me. So I'm going to take the points. I'm going to come out of here with the championship lead, but it's not by much. And I think this one's going to go down, like I said, to the wire. It's going to be really entertaining to watch all season long. I am here for it. But like I said in the opening, let's talk about the Marc Marquez injury, because the conspiracy theorists are already out. We've talked about, well, it was a broken bone, well, it's ligament damage, did he need surgery, did he not need surgery, is it worse than we thought? The conspiracy rumors are, oh, maybe this is another career-ending injury. We just don't know what his timeline to heal is until he gets a little bit deeper in the process. This is massively fast. He just had surgery. They're not going to know everything they need to know about the mobility. The shoulder is very complicated. There's a lot of moving parts in there. It's a very complex joint, and it is why it can be a career ender. But nothing that has come out is suggesting that quite yet. Now, people were a little concerned when it sounded like the timeline for his return was not this year at all. It sounded like Marc said at the beginning when he first got the injury that, well, maybe a return later in the season, I'll be out a few weeks, no big deal. I'm going to rest up, I'm going to listen to my body like he's been saying all along. And now it's kind of come out that maybe this timetable for recovery is a little bit longer than we thought. Now, the other thing to keep in mind is he is in his 30s, not in his 20s. Your body takes a little longer to heal. Again, he's going to take the slow and steady approach. And a lot of fans out there are saying, well, why on earth would he want to come back this season? He has nothing left to prove. He's won on the Ducati. He's won all the races this year. He's been absolutely dominant. He's won the world title. There's nothing to play for by him coming back this season. But it's Marc's words earlier in this season that make me think he will come back for the last round in Valencia. And it has nothing to do with winning races. It has nothing to do with 2025 points. It's all about getting ready for next year. Marc openly told the media once the championship was wrapped up in 2025, he was going to turn all his focus to 2026. He did not get that chance, being that the very first round after he won the title, he was in the gravel trap with a seriously bad injury, and we hope he recovers very soon. But his eye is still towards 2026, and you can't have, as we've seen this year with Jorge Martin, you can't have a great winter testing program if you're not riding the bike. And Marc is going to want to be at that final round in Valencia, less about the racing, less about being there for the race, and more about being there for that first test on the bike that they will ride in 2026. And I think he can use that last round in Valencia as almost a warm-up to get ready for the test. Not as a trying to get into Q2, trying to run at the front. We know Marc is going to try if he's there. But if he's healthy enough for the test on Tuesday, why not bring him in for the race weekend, get him up to speed, get him back on the bike. He'll have been off the bike for over a month, get him back up to speed on the MotoGP bike, and then he could also test the difference between what that bike is doing and then what the next bike is doing on that Tuesday test. It's going to be incredibly crucial for him to see the difference, for him to adjust to the new bike, for him to give feedback on the new bike, see if they're going in the right direction or not, and so that Ducati, as the riders take off for vacation, can go back to the factory and really put the screws in and figure out what they need to do to get this bike back to where they were hoping it was going to be in 2025. I think everyone can say at this point the 2025 bike was not really a step forward to 2024. Marc is riding it phenomenally. The other riders who are on the 2025 are up and down, as we will talk about a little later. But I think for Marc, it's really important that he be there for that last round, get some laps under his belt. Maybe he doesn't race. Maybe he just goes there for practice and does, I don't feel medically ready to race this weekend yet. The full grueling race weekend. Why am I going to risk injury in and among those other riders? But I do think he's going to be there that weekend. He's going to try to race in Valencia so that that can then translate into a successful Tuesday test. He's going to want to be there over the winter. And starting off on the back foot like we've seen, Jorge Martin, still is miles behind the rest of the Aprilia riders. Forgetting this last injury, we're just talking about the test injuries at the very beginning. He rode that bike at the Valencia test, and then when they came back in Sepang, it's been a nightmare ever since for Jorge Martin. He's never really been able to get his feet underneath him. You need the winter testing. You need the practice. You need the feedback if you're Ducati, because right now Marc's your number one rider. He's the guy who's going to be offering you the feedback that you're going to be listening to the most to win next year for the MotoGP Championship in 2026. So I do think he's going to come back this year. Mark my words, he'll race at Valencia as a warm-up to that Tuesday test. But don't get me wrong, it's all about the test. The points on the Saturday and Sunday for this Grand Prix, for this season in Valencia, don't matter to him at all. Now, I do want to talk about another rider because we spent a lot of time this year talking about Pecco Bagnaия's inconsistencies. We've seen him win in Japan, be competitive in races, and then just be absolutely nowhere, like this last weekend in Australia, like the weekend before in Mandalika. It was almost sad just seeing how slow he was compared to the other riders. The other rider I want to talk about, though, is Fabio Di Giannantonio, who's on the exact same bike as Marc Marquez and Pecco Bagnaia, who's also had a very up and down year. I mean, some weeks, like Misano, this guy is fast. He's hunting for podiums. He's looking really good. He's looking really confident. He's beating his teammate. And other weeks, he's nowhere. And when we went to Australia, I didn't really know. I know he loves the Australian track. I mean, this was the track where he kind of started his MotoGP resurgence tour, got the podium in Australia, and then the win in Qatar that actually sealed his fate and got him as a part of this VR46 project. So we know he loves the track. But judging by qualifying, he didn't look comfortable at all, barely scraping, a top 10? P10 qualifying on that GP25, kind of nowhere, especially when we're looking at Bezzecchi and everyone else moving so fast. But in Sunday's Grand Prix, there he is, running front runner pace, passing everyone on his way to a podium yet again. So where has this Digia been? Is this a case of Pecco Bagnaia? Some weeks the bike just works. Some weeks the condition is right. The temperature was cooler in Australia than it was in Mandalika. Maybe that's part of the factor that makes Digia go slower to Indonesia than he did in Australia. Didn't work out for Pecco. Pecco in the cooler temperatures looked worse this week than he did the week before. So what is it about this GP25 that's so tricky week in and week out? And it seems like even Digia is looking at it going, God, I wish we could have qualified because my race pace, I felt like I was there all weekend long. We couldn't qualify. We couldn't really push really hard on the front end of the motorcycle to get the most out of a soft tire. And then I'm stuck back in 10th place, having to come through the entire pack to get on the podium, rather than being up at the front and fighting with Bezzecchi and Raul Fernandez for the win. Now, it feels like maybe the weakest part of this Ducati motorcycle is the front end. We've seen Pecco complain of chatter, complain of instability under braking. And so when you're not feeling that stability, the first thing to go is your one-lap speed. If you don't have front-end confidence on a motorcycle, you're not going to be able to wring the neck of every single tenth of a second you could possibly do. It's just, you're going to have to leave some in reserve because you're worried the second you start pushing. We've seen this on the Honda and we've seen this on the Ducati. The second you really start pushing and you don't have that front-end confidence, that front-end feel, you lose the front, you end up in the gravel trap, and all of a sudden, like qualifying 10th would have been a blessing, because you're sitting there qualifying 15th, you can't get out of Q1 and stuff like that. So I'm thinking right now the problem for Ducati that they're really having is that motorcycle's front end is very sensitive. The bandwidth of operation for that motorcycle on the front end is very razor thin, and either you get it right or you get it wrong, and there isn't much difference in between. And I think this weekend we saw Pecco Bagnaia get it very wrong, and we saw Digia get it very right, even though he couldn't get it right on the soft tire. It seems like it's a very sensitive motorcycle. They have all the power in the world. It feels like they have a good amount of braking, but not the braking stability to give the riders really the confidence to tip into corners at high speeds and really push the front. We've seen how it is when they're in a group, that Pecco is always getting the chatter. I think they were showing some shots this weekend of him getting the same sort of thing. So it feels like that's what's going on the front end of that motorcycle. And if you don't have confidence, like I said, you're not going to go fast, especially in qualifying. But hats off to Digia. Now he is back ahead of his teammate on that VR46 team. Again, he has the potential. He's on the equipment to go really fast, to be on podiums, and that's where Ducati expect him to be. Don't forget, this guy is a factory contracted rider. They're looking at him to, if they do decide to part ways with Pecco in the future, Digia has to be on the short list of names that you're thinking of to put in the factory team. I don't think he's on the top of that short list. Don't come after me, oh, Digia, you think he's going to go to factory Ducati? I didn't say that. I'm saying he has to perform as if that's the expectation. And so we have to see him up to the front more often, and it's just the inconsistency and the wild inconsistency on that motorcycle with that rider. It's not a way to really climb the ladder yet. So I think best case for Digia is he puts in a really good year at the end of the year this year. He impresses next year, and maybe another factory comes calling, finds another ride somewhere else. I don't see him sticking around with that VR46 team long term, because there are going to be some exciting new prospects coming up. There's going to be some younger riders that Ducati is going to want to bring through. There's going to be Emmanuel Gonzalez. There's going to be another guy coming up through the ranks that they're going to want to take a look at. And unless Digia is just blowing the barn doors off the place, I don't see him having a long-term future there. He has to start putting races together week in and week out. A lot closer to what Alex Marquez is doing, where even on a bad weekend, Alex is still fighting in the top 6, trying to figure it out, trying to fight for the front. I know they're on different bikes, but that's the performance level they need to be at to make it make sense. Now, let's move away from Ducati because I want to talk about the parity of the MotoGP paddock this year, because there's something I didn't even realize is that this year, after this last race in Australia, we've now had 7 MotoGP winners this season, 7 different winners, from an Aldeguer with his first win last week, Ralph Fernandez with his first win this week, and we've Alex Marquez, Marc Marquez, Pecco Bagnaia, who can forget Marco Bezzecchi, and of course Johann Zarco on the Honda. So we've had 4 Ducatis win, 2 Aprilias, and a Honda win a race. We also had Fabio Quartararo on a Yamaha leading a race that could have very well been the eighth rider this season to win a race in a year that Marc Marquez has absolutely dominated. If you also look at the results, the standings of this year, with the exception of Alex Marquez, who has rode extremely, extremely well, and that Gresini team is a very polished and professional outfit with some great people behind it. With the exception of Alex, the top 5 riders in the World Championship are all factory riders. We haven't seen that much in the last few years because the Ducatis and the independent teams have been so freaking strong. We've seen the Pramac riders go really strong. We've seen the VR46 riders and the Gresini riders be up there beating full factory teams. And this year, it looks like we're getting into a little more what we call the status quo. It seems like the factory guys seem overall to have the advantage. Obviously, Honda and Yamaha are still trying to get over well, for Honda, the very terrible first half of the season that means in no way are they going to climb into the top of the rankings in the second half, no matter how well they do. But we're seeing KTM, Aprilia, and Ducati in that top 5, the factory outfits doing factory things like they're supposed to. So the concessions are working. I think we have to give credit where credit is due. We all like to get on the internet and complain about, oh, Dorna's doing this, and all the tire pressure, and oh, the aero, and all these things that they're doing wrong, and they're ruining the sport of MotoGP, and this aero era is ruining MotoGP. Well, when they get something right, when these concessions are coming in and they're trying to level the playing field, they're trying to get us out of the Ducati Cup and all the other things that everyone complains about, when they're starting to work and we're starting to see Pedro Costa every single week running at the front with the Ducati, Bez on the Aprilia every single week running at the front with the Ducati, even the Honda, Marini and Mir running at the front with the Ducati. When we see those things, we have to look at the rules and go, wow, they're actually doing something about what we're complaining about. They're trying to make this into a level playing field. They're trying to get everyone back competitive. So this is a riders' championship for real. It is not just one manufacturer who rides over everyone and then it's over with. So I do think it's important that amongst all our complaining that we give a little bit of credit to the concessions and the things they're trying to do in MotoGP to make the sport better, to make it more entertaining. No one wants to make the sport boring. There's no one out there going, oh, I wish the sport sucked more. And I think a lot of times fans act like that MotoGP is just out trying to make their sport worse. They are not. It is a very difficult thing. It happens in every sport. We change rules. Some people hate it. Some people like it. Wow, we have the new kickoff rules in the NFL. They're terrible. Meanwhile, everyone loves it. Well, they got the kicking balls. And there's rules in baseball that change all the time. MotoGP, Formula One, motorsports are no different. And it takes the change of those rules to kind of alleviate some of the problems that we talk about day in and day out. So it means the MotoGP, Dorna, Liberty Media, all of them are listening to us at least a little bit. And when we talk about the rules that are going to come to effect in 2027, that is part of it. It is part of making the sport better. They can't just throw the baby out with the bathwater and just go, all right, start over. Let's just do something crazy, because who knows if that'll work. They have to look at what they have going on now, what they can have going on in the future, and make incremental steps to try to change the sport and move it in the right direction. It's a slow process, y'all. Everyone wants it to change overnight and go back to the Rossi-Lorenzo battle in Barcelona days. It's not going to happen overnight. They're trying to make corrections. They're trying to make the sport better. No one wants the sport to be boring. So a little bit of credit goes out to Dorna for the concessions. I think they're working. I think the new regulations will also help. I think the new tire manufacturer is going to be huge in seeing some different names come to the front, and maybe some of the tried and true names not do as well and not get on pace with the tires. It's going to be very, very different. So I'm very excited to see that in 2027. So thumbs up to Dorna and all that going on. But I want to talk about Aprilia. Because as you know, if you've been watching and following along, I'm the #1 Aprilia hater. I have refused to give credit where credit is due when it comes to Aprilia and the second best motorcycle on the grid for the last 3 years that could only win 3 races. That has been my criticism of Aprilia so far, is that they don't have a motorcycle that can get out come out of the crate and just be good everywhere. They had to have conditions align perfectly. It couldn't be hot because the bike was baking the riders that were riding it. It couldn't be slick. They needed traction. It couldn't be stop and go because their braking wasn't good. They needed the perfect tracks to make the perfect races. It doesn't seem like that is a true statement anymore. 7 podiums this year for Aprilia in Grand Prix, the most they've ever had. And we've seen riders, don't get me, they finally have good riders. Maverick Vinales is a MotoGP race winner on several different brands. He's a good frickin' rider. Say what you want about him. Oh, he's sensitive. He's this. He's a freaking really talented MotoGP rider. Aleix Espargaro will tell you, I am not the most talented guy on the grid, but I bust my ass and I work hard. And he built that Aprilia to be what it is today. He did a great job at that factory. Was he a MotoGP championship contender? I never thought he would be, but I did think he's a very talented rider, has a long, successful career, and he has gone over to Honda, and they've already said how valuable his feedback has been with the Honda machine, making those steps already. The guy knows what he's doing, so stop it with that. Is Bez and Jorge Martin more talented? We are talking about such fine margins in MotoGP. I'm not going to attribute all of it just to the rider. I'm going to give Aprilia some credit, finally. I said a few weeks ago, have Aprilia finally turned a corner? I wasn't ready to say it yet. I'm ready to say it now. I think Aprilia have turned a corner in their MotoGP product, in their MotoGP project, in the bike itself. I think this bike has turned a corner, and I will tell you why. Because when we look at Australia, we look at a track that on paper should fit the Aprilia really well. It's fast and flowing. It's not high temperature. This is a type of track that Aprilia should go well at. Now, at tracks like this, what I want to see Aprilia do is dominate. When we look at Ducati and how they do in Australia and places like that where it's really hard braking, stop and start type layout tracks that Ducati loves, what do they do at those races? They finish like 1 through 6. They finish high at those races, and only the KTM can really, basically if that's their backyard, can really compete. I wanted to see Aprilia come out and absolutely dominate a track they're supposed to be strong at. I don't want them winning by 2/10. I don't want them finishing on the podium and calling that a success. I wanted to watch them dominate a race weekend at a track they're supposed to dominate, and they absolutely did. Bez was unbelievable all weekend long. Even with 2 long laps, he finishes on the podium. He's had an incredible season. He's the rider of the year if Marc Marquez doesn't have this historic year he's had. Bez, freaking amazing. And then we have to talk about Raul Fernandez, someone who everyone, maybe including myself, has written off in MotoGP, is not quite there, not talented to make it. He didn't have it, just didn't have it. We saw KTM cut him loose after 1 season. He didn't have it. And now Aprilia has picked him back up, lifted him up. He's had sprint podiums now, 2 in a row, and a double podium this week in his first race win in Australia. The Aprilia is humming. And the two of them, the way they did it is the thing that I've been waiting for Aprilia to do. It wasn't a scrap it out into the last lap, fight off everyone, defend really well, play the game, racecraft, yada, yada, yada. It was pure domination by a motorcycle that was just better than everyone else, with 2 riders on it who are feeling very, very comfortable and confident. It's a deadly, deadly combination. And when we look to 2026, if this motorcycle keeps making these strides they are making, we are going to be looking at a Aprilia team who is stacked, who should, going into 2026, again, there's a lot of ifs, ands, buts, and maybes, all these sort of, well, it coulda. But if things can go right for them, if they can keep this bike on the trajectory they're going into next season with a confident Marco Bezzecchi, a fast Marco Bezzecchi. They're going to go into next season with a Jorge Martin, a former world champion, who's going to have a winner under his belt to test that motorcycle. He's going to figure out the qualifying. This might be the best 1-2 punch in MotoGP if Jorge's healthy and they're both fast. Then you look at the Trackhouse side and you have Raul Fernandez, who is now getting on podiums and winning races. And a massive accomplishment for him in his career, but I think he can take the next step and keep pushing that forward. And then you have the rookie, a former Moto2 champion, Ayagura, who, as David Abrivia said this weekend, the thing you have to look at with Ay is he's still coming back from injury, but when you look at a race weekend, from Friday to Saturday to Sunday, he gets better every single day. It's the little things you have to pay attention to. It's the things inside the paddock that we don't all see, that the riders and the team see. We see on Friday, where is he? On Saturday, a little bit better. And then on Sunday, moving forward in the race. So that's a 1, 2, 3, 4 lineup at Aprilia that I would put up against anybody else. And if the motorcycle is right, they're going to be the constructor, the team, and possibly the rider championship favorite going into 2026. Except for there's the small problem of a guy named Marc Marquez. But they'll deal with that later. Well, thank you so much for joining me on Monday Morning MotoGP. Make sure you follow me, share all the stuff I said before, and we're going to do I Told You So Tuesday on Wednesday and talk about my MotoGP fantasy team as we cling to life, trying to finish out the season on the podium. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you next time.